Tēnā rā koutou katoa, he mihi mahana ki a koutou. He mihi ki a koutou o te haukainga, koutou o ngā mātauranga e hui hui nei. Mai te maunga o Ruapihu, ka rere mai te awa o whangaehu. Ka tai mai te awa ko te kainga o Kauangaroa, kei reira taku kainga, ko Ngāti Apa te iwi. Nō reira tēnā koutou. Today I thought I'd just talk about some of the key lessons that I feel are important. They look very light-hearted when you see them, but actually they're deadly serious. And I'm going to start by just talking about the fact that Marilyn talked about 25 years of Kaupapa Māori research. I've sort of counted 18 years from the time I did my master's thesis here at the University of Auckland. So what have I learnt in 18 years and 6 mokopuna later? I think there are some basics about Kaupapa Māori research that really don't change. And one of them is that whenever we're working in Kaupapa Māori research, we're constantly navigating complex power relations. And we're also struggling to unravel our understandings of whakapapa kōrero, or as some people call it, original instructions, and our struggle as reclaimers of te reo Māori and tikanga. And that's an important component of our research all the time. That doesn't change. What also hasn't changed is our understanding of structural power, the ongoing colonising project, gender, race, class relationships. They continue. Our positioning is important, whether we're located in iwi, whether we're urban, and where we fit in the generational picture. And I think there's an ongoing thing that we do all the time, which is we're constantly trying to assess benefits, interventions, and well-being, that we're changing the definition of these things as we go. There have been changes in the research environment, and I just wanted to talk about that. We're located in Whanganui. Our research institute is based down there within our own whānau hapū iwi situation, and we've been there for a number of years now, quite a few years. There have been significant changes in the research environment. Some iwi now have significant economic political power, but the barriers are still there for iwi. They haven't necessarily gone away, but there are some changes. There's a growing capacity of iwi, hapū and non-university research. And that's happening with hapū groupings, iwi, as well as institutions like ours, which is independent. Iwi are beginning to define research needs more proactively. It's kind of a wee bit slow, but it's moving along. And I think the interests are going beyond environmental research. I mean, I think in the beginning it was very much about environmental research was the main concern of iwi, and revival of te reo Māori and tikanga Māori. Another change is the way that we're redefining the power relationships of collaborative research. And I think Miri would probably have some good examples of the ways that that is changing. The other thing that's changing is the increased Māori capacity in biomedical science, psychology, and a whole lot of other disciplines that we never were able to draw on before. And it's making things really exciting to be able to bring those collaborative relationships together. The first lesson I want to talk about is how, when we're doing research, we can completely change our minds and we're still right. We can be right here and we can be right there. And I just wanted to give a couple of examples of that. One was in 1994, I wrote my thesis on colonisation and iwi development. And I was very critical of iwi settlements and the treaty process. And rightly so, it's important to be so. But then later I went home and then I wound up on the runanga and involved with a treaty settlement process, and now we've just concluded our treaty settlement process. So, but both sets of analysis are relevant, so location can change our perspective. Another example I want to give of that is in the grandparents. I've done a study of grandparents raising mokopuna, and there's a fairly widespread belief amongst us that we are still raising mokopuna voluntarily. And what I found in that research was large numbers of moko being taken care of by grandparents as an intervention measure, and for some reason because the parents are unable to look after those grandchildren. So, however, we've got aspirational ideas about raising mokopuna. And to me, those two things remain. You've got aspirational ideas as well as current facts. And I think it's best summed up by a Native American researcher who talks about the way Indigenous people are born into a world that no longer exists. So we have aspirations and we have facts. Yeah. Both of those things work simultaneously in our communities. I think another important lesson along the way is just how some Māori can be other, and how as researchers we are constantly negotiating the fact that we are other to them and they are other to us. And examples of that would be in the prison project that we undertook last year. We're still doing work in prisons, and talking to people with completely different life experiences. Whakapapa and culture can mediate that to a certain extent. We have very good ways of making links regardless of those differences. Another example of that would be in the Māori Vietnam Veterans Project, where the Māori veterans were very much more comfortable actually with other males. So as a female interviewer, if there was another male in the room, they would turn to the male to talk and to respond, unless you were there on your own. So, you know, we're constantly looking at those issues of how, we're just not a homogenous group. One of the key things, and many people have talked about this before with Kaupapa Māori, whether it's Kaupapa Māori service or Kaupapa Māori research, is that we can move mountains with a kaupapa and a whānau, and a committed whānau. But there's a limit to that too. We can do anything for 1 to 2 years with a committed whānau and a kaupapa, but then we need help or funding. And that's been exactly our situation with the institute that we set up. We set up independently as an independent research institute. We struggled through the first year, through the second years, and then gradually got more solid. But had we not done that, we would have fallen over for sure. The Māori Vietnam Veterans Project, really we've done pretty much a whole project there without funding. We've had minimal funding and it's just been for travel, but we have not let it stand in our way. And I think it's a key component that even though we might get, heaps of money, we're still prepared to do research that needs to be done. The other thing that it's important for us as we're going along is if there's a rule, then it may need to bend more towards our values. And that's a constant thing that is happening throughout our research projects. And I'll just give you one example of that. For example, or actually maybe two. For example, going to work in the prisons was really interesting because I was out at the women's prison here at Auckland Women's, and going in the gate, and one of the first people I ran into was a relation from home who's actually a prison officer there. And the first thing he did was said to me, "Oh, there's heaps of them from Whanganui here." And then as we went around the prison, he said, "That one's from Whanganui, this one's so-and-so from Whanganui," and completely cut through all of the processes that normally exist around corrections protocols, around our research protocols, around all of these things, in order to really help in a number of ways that was all about whanaungatanga. And so it underlies very strongly all of our interactions. In another situation with grandparents raising mokopuna, I'll just say briefly there that really I've wound up needing to be advocate and advocate. So to step out of the role of being a researcher and into the role of being an advocate in a number of situations, purely out of desperate needs. The other thing, I think, the other important lesson is sometimes we do things and then we develop the rules later. And I mean, I think if we didn't do this, we wouldn't have half the stuff going that we have got. And often we're working with no precedents as well. And that means that we've got to create them as we go. And that, when we started working with people who had been through trauma, with Māori whānau who had been through trauma, there were no precedents for how to work with them. So we worked alongside, in that case with Māori veterans, a trauma specialist, and we also had to monitor the impacts on Māori researchers and develop the process as we went. But the Māori processes had to be negotiated. We had to figure out, you know, karakia or no karakia, various other things as we were going step by step. Having said that, though, I would say that at the end of the day, we'd probably have no new Māori organisations if we did not have that ability. That's actually my last slide. So I just want to wrap up by saying probably those 5 things. What I'm trying to get across there is that kaupapa Māori research is very much about a fluidity that has to be maintained. That anybody who tries to really nail it down and say, this is what whanaungatanga looks like, this is what kotahitanga looks like, this is what mana is going to miss the point in the actual engagement. Relationships are critical in kaupapa Māori research. If you do not have really good, solid relationships, you cannot work in that way to get for a start, to get the trust of your own people, and also to engage effectively. So I'll just leave it there and pass it on to you. Kia ora.